Faithful! Come here. Faithful! Faithful! Come on, come on. Come on, let's go. Let's go, let's go. Let's go, come on. Come on, come on, come on. What you doing, big boy? Let's go. Come on, come on. Hey, what you doing? Yeah. Come on.
For the first time in 100 years, our country and our world faced a real pandemic. Some died, some denied, millions were paralyzed. Within the chaos and the fear and the uncertainty, a very few found inspiration.
The pandemic caught me off guard, just like it did everybody else. I knew that I didn't want to be locked up. I knew I didn't want to be in a quarantine. But I think above all, I just didn't want to start painting again. But I did. I started painting. And when I did start painting, I was in for a big surprise. All of a sudden, I had all of this energy and excitement and inspiration that I had not felt in years. And I started using some experimental techniques right on the canvas that I think made a big difference. And all of a sudden, those images that I had been looking for just exploded off of the canvas.
I was painting my own pandemic. That's how Carroll described these paintings. They are easily some of the most evocative and emotional canvases of the hundreds he has ever done. So who is this artist that year after year and decade after decade continues to find new ways to express what all of us feel in paint and in words?
I knew that I had created enough work to have a skeleton of a show, but I didn't have a complete show. I had to have something that would flesh it out. So I turned to my friend, Jack Harrington. Jack had approached me before this pandemic and told me that he was working on a photo essay and that he would like to include me in it. And I kind of wondered, I had no idea what he was going to do, but I knew one thing about it. I knew if Jack did it, he would do it to perfection, so I agreed. Well, I got a chance to see the photo essay, and it was exactly and precisely what we needed for this show. It was intense, and he had captured a moment that was very strange. Both Jack and I had felt that something was going to happen before the pandemic happened. I think artists all over the world did. You had a feeling of something foreboding that was going to happen, or something was going to happen. You just didn't know what it was. While I was painting, he was capturing some strange but beautiful images with his camera that recorded not only this strange time, but an artist working. Photography is a sideline for Jack Harrington. His love and passion is sculpture. He makes sculpture out of discarded auto parts, and they're beautiful and powerful, like this piece right here. Jack has captured the virus, this horrible killer virus, and made something beautiful out of it, but then juxtaposes it against what this killer virus is doing to mankind and the weight it has put on mankind. This is a very, very important piece. I wanted to add one more dimension to the show. And I had been in quarantine, and I'd been missing communicating with my friends, so I asked them, I said, please send me your thoughts and write something down and send it to me. And they did. And these are some of the comments that I received. Some are very poignant, some are humorous, and some are even sad, but I appreciated them sending them. Jack Lazarus said, Bourbon Street never looked so good. I agree with that. Frank Halbert said, pull up and read General MacArthur's farewell address at West Point. That's a good one. And Susan Fail Gibb said, Chipper said, and Chipper's her husband, when things go back to normal, let's not go back to normal. I wanted to present these pieces in an austere way. So I took black trash bags and covered out my windows in the studio and put them on it. The show is called The Invisible War.
In most cases, artists are lucky to have several shows over their career. Most artists excel at just one genre of art and never change. Most artists are good at art, but not at business. In most cases, painters aren't authors or photographers or cinematographers. But this story is not about most artists, but about one extraordinary case, Carroll Case.
I never considered myself an artist. It was just something that I felt like I had to do, and I did, and I enjoyed doing it. And at the end of the day, I had created something. One day, a guy came into the shop and asked for the person who made the sculptures. So I went out and I talked with him. Well, I didn't really talk. He talked for about an hour, and I listened for an hour. And at the end of that hour, he left, and I was an artist. And it wasn't that he ever used the word artist, because he didn't. And it wasn't because he had any kind of authority to confer on me the title of artist. It was the way he spoke. It was the things that he said to me. It was the way he looked at my sculptures. It's the way he touched them, and he told me about his experience. It was Carroll Case that had the power to make me an artist.
I am sitting in Carroll Case's parlor, surrounded by some of his art, which is a great thrill for me. You know, I've got a painting in my hand, I've got a painting at my feet, and a painting at my back. What more could you ask for? I have that incredible respect for this man as an artist. And I also feel when I see one of his paintings and when I touch it, it's a tactile experience, it's an emotional experience for me. I think that's one of Carroll's great gifts, is he knows the society, and he basically makes a way through his art to chronicle that and to make sure that we remember it. You know, looking back on the Katrina items, I think there were crosses made from wonderful salvaged wood. And you know, you think back to that experience and how it affected each of us. And I think one of an artist's greatest gifts for us is to be able to respond that way to his art or to their art. You think about the great religious paintings, and I think that there have been times when some of Carroll's work basically borders on the sacred, and I think those things are what we hope for when we see good art. You know, is that the artist has been able to somehow internalize everything about humanity and being and existence, and and translate it into his art and leave us something lasting, which I think Carroll has easily done. How do you measure 80 years and at least 60 years of a painter's life? I think that Carroll Case readily shows us how vital and how important art has been to his life and to his understanding. And it's not only his art, but it's his writing, his cinematography, all the things that he has embraced, that have basically showcased his talents and his ability. I have a great portrait of Mikhail Baryshnikov that Carroll did actually for the International Ballet Competition. But you can begin to see the scope of Carroll's work when you see something that's certainly more, not predictable at all, because it certainly embraces his ability to faction out color and shape and form. But you see a true image, you're seeing a recognizable image, but the impact is the emotional response I think that you get to it. And I think that it was important to show this painting because it steps outside of what we see as the more normal, Carroll Case, painting experience. And I think that too, again, and I've said it before, but part of what he does so well is, is to transition and to let his emotion and his ability and his understanding of the world around him translate into his art. And that's why you begin to see different motifs, and you see recurring motifs, but then you see original things that happen, from experiences like the Katrina paintings and art that he produced, and now in his 80th year of the pandemic, the art that he's produced in response to the pandemic. It's what we hope for with an artist, is that they make some sort of lasting contribution to the world around us.
I've known Carroll forever, it seems like, and my husband went to high school with Carroll, graduated with Carroll, so he knew Carroll. He has written, actually, when Ralph was inducted into the Mississippi Sports Hall of Fame, and reporters from everywhere were wanting to come write his write-up for publicity, and he said, there's only one person that can write my story, and that's Carroll Case. So Carroll wrote all of the publications, a lot of the things that went into his induction into the Mississippi Sports Hall of Fame. Lance Allworth came for it, and he said, Carroll did all that, and he told the truth in every single word. So it was pretty neat to have somebody that you graduated with to write about your sports career. This piece really has a lot of emotional attachment for me, not just because it's a Carroll Case piece, but it's the one piece my husband actually picked out himself. I took him to a show. He went to have the beer and sit around and visit with everybody and let me pick out what I wanted. But then he ran up to me at the show and he said, well, come here, because there's a piece he did of you. And I said, no, he didn't. And he said, yes, he did a piece that's you. And so I said, okay, well, show me. Knowing that it was not a piece about me, and when I saw it, my heart dropped. I really was just shocked. I had not seen this, wasn't aware that he did this. He knew I loved his drawings. It still was not all about me, but my husband said, I've seen you like this so many times. I bought this piece not long after my son was killed in a plane crash. And this piece it really did feel like me. Like I said, that was not his intention when he did it, but it's the way that many, many times with Carroll's work, I have gone in and just felt something like the dancer. I absolutely love this.
Boundaries represent a line that mark the limits of an area. Sometimes the boundary is our limit of creativity, or the limit of our skill. For Carroll Case, no boundaries means the willing freedom to pursue the depth of shapes in a painting not yet on canvas, the words of a story not yet written, the forms of a photograph still in his mind, or the face of a friend not yet made. No boundaries doesn't mean he will try anything and hope it works out. It is tempered by confidence and judgment. Carroll is unique. He walks each day so easily through each new boundary because he is forever bounded by the structure of his experience, observation, and insight.
I bought my first piece of art in the first grade. I was 6 years old, and I had a classmate that brought a drawing that his older brother had done, and I wanted to have it. It was a beautiful drawing. It was a drawing about a cowboy on a horse, and it was on unruled paper, and it was crude, but it was neat. So I gave him 5 cents of my recess money to get it, and I never regretted it. I grew up in Brookhaven, Mississippi, and my folks had a dry cleaning plant. They kept long hours. They started at like 6 o'clock in the morning and went on to 6 o'clock at night. And I had a lot of spare time. And I spent my spare time in the office space of that building drawing and writing. I draw on typewriter paper. I draw on cardboard, garment bags. I go outside and draw on the walls of alleys and also on sidewalks with chalk. I guess that's when I first decided that I wanted to be either a writer or an artist or both. But I knew one thing for sure. I knew that one thing I would be a dreamer. I wrote stories, little sketches of stories on an upright old Royal typewriter, the hunt and peck type thing that you remember, and when the carriage would get to the end, it would ring. It was a bell. It was a very neat typewriter. I would write little stories and little adventures and things, and I talked about my cousin Forrest Jr. because he was my hero. Kids have heroes. Growing up in Brookhaven, Mississippi, in the time that I grew up, in the 40s and the 50s, was a very safe time. It was a time when children had dreams, children were safe, and children had heroes. And my heroes was Forrest Jr., my cousin. And a lot of my stories, a lot of these little things that I would write would be about him. Well, they were so childish and so primitive. But that was 12 years old. At the age of 39, I went back and refined those same pieces and turned them into novellas. And novellas like Grapevines, Rabbit Tobacco, and the Boca Chica Red, and Moving, and Youth and Memory. And before long, that attracted the attention of other collectors, and one of those collectors happened to be the most prestigious children's literature collection in the world, the DeGrumman Collection. And all of a sudden, the character in my little stories at 12 years old, like Forrest Jr., found a place and a character that he will always be in the archives.
The DeGrumman collection includes Carroll's work in its permanent collection, including Grapevines, Rabbit Tobacco, and Boca Chica Red. The university collection also includes 6 other of his books and photographs, including Revelations from New Zion and The Slaughter.
I think writing and painting basically the same. It's taking a concept or an idea and putting it in a form that is relatable to other people. In your writing, you start off, it's just like a long letter. If you want to write a short story, if it's a book, it's a real long letter. I was never a good student. I would hear teachers talking about, well, I think he's bored, I think he's a dreamer, and that's not really true. A dreamer, maybe. Bored, I've never been bored a day in my life. I was more interested in drawing and painting and writing than I was in if A and B equal to C. That didn't matter to me. What was important to me was to try to understand the world that I was living in, even at that age. I never played high school sports, and I regretted it. I admired those that did, but I just did not have that athletic ability. Like I said, I was always writing and drawing on everything that I could find, and writing even at a very young age. I didn't play football in high school, but before I was a junior in high school, I was published. When I went to Ole Miss, I had no idea what I wanted to do. I had no idea what kind of major that I wanted to do. I had no idea what I wanted to be. I had no idea what I wanted to achieve. I had a hard time declaring a major. I spent most of my time at the art department or the theater department. And I spent a lot of time on the square at Oxford talking to William Faulkner. William Faulkner's first book only sold to less than 500 people, and he was a Nobel Prize author. William Faulkner was more than just an acquaintance. He became a friend. And we would sit and talk, and I remember one time he was telling me, he said, "Carroll, do you realize that while we're talking, there are 2 students out in my backyard digging dirt, digging my clay, and they're going to make pottery out of it?" And he would laugh. Well, many years later, I found out he was telling the truth, because Lee and Pup McCarty, the famous potters, told me that that's exactly what they were doing. I think an artist is the product of the people he's around, and in my life I have been very fortunate. My wife is very supportive of me, and I have been so fortunate to have met people who have mentored me along the way, like William Faulkner, like Bill Dunlap, like George Dunbar. I auditioned for a play. I guess that was my junior year, and I won the part. And as a result of that part, I got a scholarship to be in the summer stock company, and that changed my life. It was a very hard time, but a very exciting time, because we did 8 plays in 8 weeks. 8 3-act plays, not 1 act, 3-act plays in 8 weeks. Very disciplined time, very hard. But as a result of that, I got into professional acting. I was accepted to join a company in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and I worked with the Fred Miller Playhouse. And I was engaged. I fell in love while I was in Ole Miss. I thought I did. And I went up there to see her in Milwaukee, so I thought that'd be a good place to work. Ended up that I broke my engagement, and I also quit acting. I found my niche. I realized my niche was art from the very beginning, and I got into art school. I went to the Memphis Academy of Arts, and I spent 3 more years to get a BFA in painting. I guess the things that I really learned and appreciated about the art school was not the faculty and not what I learned. I learned most of my stuff from other students. I also learned the magic of what a SLR camera could do. And I knew right there then that even though I made my best grades in portraiture, I was not interested in doing realistic work. If I did, I would depend on a camera to do it. When I was going to school, abstract expressionism was a big thing. I was very influenced by William de Kooning, Robert Motherwell, and an artist in New Orleans by the name of Ida Kohlmeyer. I thought she was terrific, and it had a lot of influence on what I did. So I started entering every show that I could enter, even in art school, which they told us we shouldn't do. Well, the Brooks Memorial Art Museum, or the Brooks, I guess they call it the Brooks Museum, it's the flagship of museums in the Mid-South. And they had an annual contest, and the contest was open to any professional painter or artist, including faculty or whatever. So as a junior in art school, I entered that. They accepted, heavily juried, they accepted 14 paintings, and out of the 14, 3 of mine were included. My first one-man show was in Houston, Texas. It was at the Sheraton Lincoln Hotel. High-class deal. My goodness. Big names. I had a wealthy sponsor. Black tie. Super event. I brought my paintings out there and showed them. And the first painting that sold was sold to Dr. Michael DeBakey, and he was the heart surgeon at that time that was world famous. It meant a lot to me that Dr. DeBakey bought a piece of my work at Houston, Texas, but actually, when I was a senior in art school, Truman Capote, the famous author of In Cold Blood, collected my work. I was very pleased when Truman Capote bought a piece of my work. I was very pleased when Johnny Cash bought a piece of my work. I was very pleased when Chris Morgan, Harry Morgan's son, the movie producer in California, bought my work. I was also very pleased when Lance Allworth, the famous football Hall of Fame player, acquired some of my work. So that makes you feel good, but I've had people who have come to my shows, and I would watch them, and they'd go back to the painting on the wall that they liked, and they would hesitate and come back. And I would finally say, "What's wrong? Is there something you don't like about it?" And they said, "Oh, no, I like that. I just can't afford it." And before they left, I saw that they took it home with them. I think I asked professor of mine at the art school, when I got there, he said, "Well, what do you want to do?" I said, "I want to paint." And he said, "Well, why don't you just go home and paint?" And I laughed, and I've thought about that many times. But my advice to someone, or the advice that I have received, is you've got to do it. If you want to be a painter, paint. If you want to be a writer, write. If you want to be a singer, sing. You've got to work at your craft, and you've got to develop it. And it's not easy. It's a process. It's a long-term thing for some people. Some people are very fortunate, and they find it quick. They cross that river at the smallest point. And others of us, it takes a little while to get across. But if you persist, you will achieve what you want to do if you want it bad enough. The scariest part of any painting is that first mark that you put on that white virgin canvas, because that mark is going to direct everything else that will go on it. And there's a moment of, there's just a moment of fear and loathing before you start. And I think that happens to all of us. I've trained myself over the years to learn to see. I try to see things that other people don't ordinarily see, or to see beauty in the things that people don't ordinarily see. I like the natural composition of things in nature, the way leaves fall together, the way branches of trees fork out from each other. I like the way that rocks form and rocks cluster. I like the way people move and people sit. And I like to hear people talk, and I like to hear them tell stories.
Carroll's work has been shown at major galleries throughout the United States. His work has been collected by celebrities and other artists and hailed as groundbreaking by critics. All the while, he has continued to cultivate the collectors that find an emotional tie with his art, and that is often the farmers, workers, mothers, and fathers who don't consider themselves art critics, but just the people that know what moves them when they see it. Art that engenders an emotional response, not once, but each time you see it.
I like the execution of my work as much as the inspiration and the concepts. It's an enjoyable experience. It's a matter of constantly refining and making selections, very much like writing. I think they're both very much alike. If you write, you have to take out things and edit and put in things, and you do the same thing when you're painting. Painting is just a process. It's a process of expression. Art has its own vocabulary and its own rules and regulations, and in abstract work, you break the rules, and that's part of the process. You want to push it to the limit and do things different with paint and with composition that you would do in a realistic setting. I make art, but I'm also very interested in people that make art. When I was director of the Mississippi Arts Commission in Jackson, I traveled all over the 80-something counties of Mississippi looking for artists and visiting artists that I knew. If I heard of a person that was really busy and gathering a little attention, or maybe not getting any attention at all, I wanted to go see it. So I'm very aware of what I see around me. One day when I got off the train in Macomb, I walked into the depot and I saw this unbelievable display of automobile parts. But the strange thing was what was done with those parts. They'd be a tail light, or look like maybe a roller skate, or a piece of a round ball or something that came out of a mechanical thing. And this person had put these together in an exciting way. And I said, I want to know who this person is, because I thought this is way, way, way above the things that I'm used to seeing in Macomb. So I actually went down and looked him up and found him, and I found Jack Harrington. And what, to my surprise, he had a whole room full of sculpture that he had made from discarded parts. And I just couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe not only the quality of the work, but the magnitude of the pieces. So I'm always looking for work, and I'm always looking for that thing that's new. I wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning, and I have a little pad by the side of my bed, because this has happened so many times. And at 3 o'clock in the morning, I call it a nocturnal messenger. But it's just an idea that comes to my mind, and I jot it down. It could be a story or it can be a painting. And I turn that into inspiration, or that is the inspiration, and then I, of course, execute it. I have had the privilege of being in a lot of galleries over my life. I've been in New York, San Francisco, Los Angeles, Atlanta, Memphis, Jackson, New Orleans, Santa Fe. I know what it's like not to be able to get money. And there have been times in my life when it was a real struggle to get up money for a canvas or to get paint. In art school, it was so bad that we sold our blood to buy materials. Did without meals. I don't look like it now, but we did. And it was really hard. It was a sacrifice. And you've heard the old saying about starving artists. Some of us really did for a little while. I think you have to be very careful, because artists, all of us, we're very sensitive, strange people. We carry our feelings right up here, real close. And that work becomes precious to us.
People retire to do the things they really want to do. Carroll can't retire, but not because he is already doing the things he really wants to do. For Carroll Case, the writer, photographer, and painter, he won't retire because he is doing the things that he has to do.
I never really know what I'm going to accomplish next. I just know that I will continue to paint as long as I live. There's nothing original. We all borrow, and we all come from a main source, and I call it a river. It's a river that is given to all of us. All we have to do is just tap into it. It's a source. You're off in a journey that finds its own end. It's a very exciting thing. I think that's why we do it. That's certainly why I do it.
Art collector at age 5, focused artist and writer by the 6th grade, published author in high school, winner in his first big art show, leader of the State Arts Commission, youngest bank president, controversial author still in print, in collections around the world, hundreds of successful shows. That's a lot even for the first 80 years. Most of us would be looking back with satisfaction on a career well spent. Carroll Case, the self-avowed dreamer, has his face, his hands, his intellect, and his heart firmly facing the opportunities ahead.
I will say this, during the pandemic, I was able to capture and to record things that I have never been able to accomplish before. I don't know if it was due to the strange times or the gift of inspiration that was given at that time. I just don't know. But I would have to say that my best work is my very last work. And that's very strange, because I'm 80 years old. And most artists, they start mellowing out when they get older, and they start painting comfortable things for them and for the viewer. I have done just the opposite. My work is more evocative and more exciting to me, and I hope to the viewer, than ever before. I think when it all comes down to the end, it's all about one thing. If you're an artist, it's about learning to see. You have to see things in the ordinary, things that people would not necessarily see. You've got to see beauty in that. Every life is important. Every life's plan is important. And all of these little pieces that you may see in your life that you don't understand will, in the end, come together. I will never stop writing. I will never stop painting until the day they take me away. Because I believe that unless you're producing, unless you're living, and you're experiencing every day to the fullest, you're not alive. Oh gosh, I think we all would like to do bigger and grander things. You have to dream and you have to hope. This is for all of you dreamers. Keep dreaming. Reach for it. You may just catch it. writing into it is what helped it. Because you really don't know what the hell it is.
What is it?